Hello, I'm Subharthi Guha. I'm an associate at Zahadi Architects and a founder at Concept SG, and I teach as well. But today we are going to talk about the changing nature of office spaces. And to do that, we must first go back to how the emergence of office spaces began from something working from home towards something like a Johnson's Wax Museum on the right hand side, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. And what we understand is in the medieval times, the work was home and home was work. And that's how people gathered and exchanged their products, etc. However, the streamlining of the office spaces started in the start of the Industrial Revolution, where people of different skill set got together and they were in a production line, which then kind of separated the two production lines. One is that's what we call as the blue collar workers, and the other is the white collar, which was just the desk jobs with the rising of the computers and the technology, which then further led to a larger sense of office spaces that we see in cities, where we have a lot of ambient natural light, like for example, in this Miss Van der Rohe building, Seagram building, and the flexibility within the space kind of allowed us to have more natural light and more options of orientation. Saying this, we have a very interesting project that we did not too long ago in 2005 at Zagadid Architects, where we kind of tried to merge the blue and the white collar workers together in this BMW factory in Leipzig. And it's interestingly, we noticed from the graph that BMW actually really yield a lot of, obviously, this is not completely catering to the building itself, but it grew substantially from 2009 onwards. And perhaps one could investigate the possibility of merging the workflow together with the administration of the work could potentially benefit. So if you look at this building in a bit more detail, it was a connection, it was an extension between the two existing factories where these office spaces would be, but one could see the cars being made at the same time as people sitting there. And these had a multiple system of layers. And one can see here that, the canteen is below where the cars are, so you're never really separate from the idea of the work itself, the production. And also the social spaces were gathered around this kind of housed in the building. So when you look at it together, it was like a wholesome experience, what we originally saw in medieval times, but in a much more modern, streamlined pipework as well. There are, however, other office typologies that we have worked in the office, and these range from towers to horizontal buildings to mixed-use developments, which is more the trend that started after the Seagram building, that we needed office spaces to be popular, not just in the day, but the space itself in the urban scenario had to be busy in the night as well. So I'm going to talk about one of the towers, what we have investigated, or what kind of technology that goes into building this. And this was one of the projects that I worked on in Milan, which is a high-rise office tower. And similar to many cities, the Milan was used to be a very low-rise, high-density model with no towers. And this site was identified, which was an exhibition center where we would have a large park, three office towers, and retail buildings together with housing. And three architects were selected for it. And us being on the left side, the architect, the one in the center is Libeskin, and one on the right was Isozaki, who would do one housing and one tower. And to have an innovative design, we had this twist that was coming at the central axis, and then you could come to the bottom of the tower, and the twist would then disappear into the air. And that was the reason of the twist of the tower. And the tower grows from bottom to top as well. And to generate these, we used computational technology to generate the twist, and obviously the wind forces and the facade systems, which is a double layer. The external layer is naturally ventilated, and the internal layer is a fire seal compartment. And here you can see the tower under construction with these layers. And therefore, we also have the lift and the office flexibility because the floor plates were changing every floor. So to give that flexibility to align the chill beams, etc., we had a lot of computational tools at the time that would govern this change in floor plate scenario. And we also investigate how the efficiency of the tower would work. So there's a lot of, as you can see, the chill beams, there's a lot of computation that goes into building one of these towers. And of course, the arrival spaces of the tower and how do you experience it, the conference room and the sitting areas and the journey from your entrance into the higher floors on the top right. So, and at the same time, the tower at the base had a bit of a commercial retail component, which we designed as well. And the retail was obviously a plug-in, and that's the composition of a mixed use of office and retail in a tower. Moving forward, the diversities in office quite branch out to many different, let's say, clients and sectors. In this case, it was a tower in Marseille, which was designed and finished in 2011. It's a complete office tower with ventilation and noise and glare controls. And on this one, it's another tower, iconic tower which is the Central Bank of Iraq, which is under construction at the moment. But as you can see, the bottom of the tower is very solid in this case because that's what the bank required as a function, and the top then starts to have more natural light and ventilation systems. Similarly, we go to something we call the Twin Towers. So although this is one building, but it actually has a metro line that divides it, and this is a Soho project that we designed with the metro line going in the center, and the two towers were then brought together as one, and we had a massive atrium in the center. And this atrium becomes a space of natural light. It becomes a space of overlooking onto one floor to the other. Um, and then we go into technological companies that we are designing for is the Oppo headquarters, as you know, is a very high-end Chinese technology company. And but here we have these cluster of four towers. So instead of being four individual towers, they come together and they merge as one, opening the rest of the site for public areas. And the merging of these towers is where the interactions happen. And also on the top of the tower, you open up some spaces for public. On the other hand, we also have done some low rise, we call it the Dominion Tower, where we get an opportunity to make the circulation spaces as chance encounters. So in this case, most of the public tend to take the staircases. And when they take the staircases, they cross each floor and meet each other. And these spaces can also go a bit larger. Over here, you can see that this is the Soho Galaxy project, where the building spans across an entire block in Beijing. And based on that, the public can flow through the building without even entering it through these multiple courtyards. And there are bridges, and this is a mixed use between office and retail and commercial. And also there are some private offices as well. So it's a very mixed use, but it still allows the public to interact and move through this building at an urban level, very similar to this new one, which is just finished in Guangzhou, the Infinitus campus. And here again, a lot of emphasis obviously being made on the sustainability of the project, etc. But that's over and top of the public space, how it gives back to the city these green areas, even though the site belongs to the client. On the other hand, we've done some, let's say, very niche headquarters in Bihar, where the people come in for a very, let's say, a very secluded work, and these were shaped in the form of sand dunes with a lot of protection from the sun. So here we don't use glass as much, and we try and use concrete and other materials, as you can see here, which kind of merge together with the landscape, and the interiors then become very cooler spaces to work in an environment with water bodies. So the space that you can come here and stay for longer. We've also done, we worked on this project, which was very interesting, how to take an existing building and then build on top of it. And between the two buildings, we have the public area where people from both buildings can come into what we call as a sky lobby and come together and enjoy a deck space and have some parties and look down or up or into the city skyline from this level. And on the interior spaces, they become these kind of interactive around the corner, the conference tables and so on and so forth that kind of open up this block offices into this kind of very interactive chance encounters around every corner. And we follow the same ideation in our office as well. This is one of our showrooms in the office where a lot of work is being displayed on the showroom, and people can come visit, clients can come visit, and we ourselves open it up to exhibitions, to students, to everybody else. So the language and the inspiration inside the office continues. However, the effect of the pandemic has been on all, and obviously on Facebook and Google and WeWork have tried to simulate more and more interactive spaces within their office system. But work from home has been a challenge for all of us, and we did work from home as well. But as we move forward from the work from home, the implementation of what we want to have is to cut down commute time for people to getting into the office. And that brings about a much deeper understanding on a city level from a building level. And this is where Carlos Moderna's 15-minute city gives us that opportunity to think about master planning in a little bit different way, which will then change the nature of the offices as well. So the idea of 15-minute cycling to any of the spaces of work, school, children, etc., brings about the collective experience much better. However, the offices currently being built by Google or Apple and so on are large-scale campuses. And the reason for this is something that is inherently we've talked about in city planning as well, that right from the very start of our civilizations, even 3,400 years ago, where we did not have industrialization, we were gathering in cities because it increases chance encounters and the knowledge database and allows us to do more than just going to the office for work. And that is the reason we've always built these kind of clusters of cities. And we are even in 2008, UN Habitat had predicted that this was going to further increase to open up. And the problem with the cities have been the density, that it's not equally distributed. And that is where the 15-minute city also comes in. Whereas you can see here, London is equally distributed in density before, but it's changing now. But that was due to the fact that Dublin was not a city planned in one go, but it was polycenters. However, the current model of investment talks a lot about the heavy investment and kind of delivering of complexity theory. It is not done by urban planners, but mostly by economists. And this leads to what I call as a Primark Urbanism, where you land up doing the buildings for generation of economy rather than for the people. And that is what the skyline of London is likely to look like very soon. And this obviously is a resultant of this Primark Urbanism, and we're all part of it in a way that these cluster of offices, the cluster of mixed-use developments are only parcels of land, and we have done quite a lot of these projects recently as well. However, we have also done low-rise, high-density projects, which is a much better, let's say, urban profile. But then not everywhere we have the flexibility or the liberty to do it, because these parcels of land are sold at very high prices, and the developers need to justify it. So what we are trying to argue, or what we have researched a bit, is currently government grants go directly to either the developer or the builders or private bodies that are 1% of the population, where 99% of the population gets the derivative of these workspaces. Whereas what we want to explore is there a way that it can open up to all and use the potential of all the people, and that would give a higher balance of economy. And this is not the first time we've talked about it. I mean, someone like Ibn Zahawa talked about the town country, where the city has its benefit, but it can get congested very easily and make it uncomfortable, where the country has the luxury of land, but does not have the right density. So can we look somewhere in between, which is the town country? And given the understanding of nature and the bottom-up systems, we feel that it's possible to do so, and bring together this idea of polycentric cities with the idea of this growth, and computation, that we can now start to develop these kind of multiple centers and the growth logic in time, so we do not need to make such heavy investments. And this we I experimented in this project in Chancery, where we had multiple polycenters distributed across the land, with existing centers as well as new centers. And that gave us a master plan, which was in Dushui, which then starts to deal with urban planning technologies that do not focus on land use distribution, but rather on the controls in time, that we can do through multiple scripts with computation, and have different nodes and hierarchies. And at the same time, we did an evaluation how it compares to the rest of the big cities in the world and what densities we achieve. And the studies are very good. Obviously, what we're trying to achieve or move away from was what we have is, can the capital be shifted from what we know as land banks and these tall towers, and half of them lying empty because it's unaffordable for people, to something where the land is no longer the holding asset, where it can move to maybe digital banks. But of course, they have their own problems, the mining and the sustainability issues, which we need to solve. And the reason for this, obviously, is looking into this kind of direction, is because the cities themselves we are overly populated. These are cities 1 million and above across the world. And as you can see, you can already see the shape of the globe, because we have almost occupied most of the land. So we believe that, and some of the interesting things that Einstein had said, and this is one of them, he said the computers are incredibly fast, accurate, and stupid, and human beings are incredibly slow, inaccurate, and brilliant. And together, it can make a powerful force beyond imagination. And I think the challenge is, in a world where everything is driven by numbers, how can we look beyond into the realm of comfort, a human comfort, and provide it through our planning systems and our space planning of the offices? Thank you very much for listening.